And thanks for having me out today. I'm from the South, and I don't often remember that all the time, but when I go up north, people always say I have a Southern drawl, which I don't really think, because where I'm from, people talk a lot more like this, and it actually sounds like you're from the South. But anyway, my point of that is, in the South, we're not used to cold days. And it's always kind of funny to me because when you wake up in the morning when the feels like temperature is 19 degrees and you live in Florida, it's like living in a foreign land. And all of a sudden everybody freaks out. Schools are closing, bridges are shutting down, nobody wants to be here. They're like, don't go out of your house, it's under 30 degrees. and I always thought that was kind of ridiculous until I woke up this morning and thought, man, it is really cold, I don't want to get out of bed. So thank you for being an adult and getting out of bed and getting dressed and coming today. I hope that what I'm able to share with you is helpful, and that you at least take one thing away from today that helps improve your life or your work in some way. Let me get this thing started up here. If you haven't seen this yet, who has seen this movie, The Greatest Showman? Not many. Okay, go see it. Unless you hate musicals, then you'll probably hate it, but go see it anyway. And here's why. It's a really neat story, although they took some historical liberties with Barnum's life. The story is of P.T. Barnum and the circus and how he started, and is kind of a rags to riches story. But what's cool about it to me, other than really good singing and dancing, and Hugh Jackman, what's up, guy? He's Wolverine, and he can sing and dance, and he's been married like 20 years too. I'm like, man, Hugh. Anyway, I'm not sure how you take something like that and turn it into what this is. But what's so cool about this movie is that it shows that marketing really hasn't changed. Marketing has been what it is for a long time. Like, this is the story sets, I think, back in the 1800s, and he's developing this new idea. He just lost his job. I'm not going to get too much of the story away. And he's trying to come up with a way to make some money to provide for his family and give his wife and little girls the dream that they always had. And the story is him starting this circus, which started as a museum of oddities or people with strange characteristics, like the bearded lady. And he takes these unusual people and makes a show out of them, which at first feels a little bit like, oh, I don't know about that. But he actually made a family for these people. He created a community, and then he got the word out with posters and flyers and stories and engagement. And it's the same stuff that we do today. We just do it with different vehicles. So what it's all about is attention. Everything is about attention. And what I mean by that is we spend so much time sometimes worrying about the tactics of the later stages of marketing that we forget to ask the question of whether or not we have their attention. Right now, for example, we're all being pulled in different directions, right? Like, we got watches that tap on us and phones that vibrate in our pockets and something else that's always happening all the time. And so my biggest challenge right now, while somebody's either eating or just finished eating, is to maintain your attention and to get your attention. Because if we don't have the attention of the people that we're marketing to, none of the other stuff that we're doing matters in any way whatsoever. It doesn't matter how good your blog post is, or how good your video was, or how good your Insta story was if you did not captivate and hold their attention at the beginning. So attention to me is a really, really important thing, and that's what P.T. Barnum in that movie shows, and I think it's worth thinking about and applying regardless of the vehicle that we're using in today's world. Before I get too much farther than this, I'd love to kind of get a gauge of who's here, because it helps me kind of craft what I'm going to talk about a little bit. So if you own your own business, will you raise your hand for me? Okay. And if you work with a company that's 50 employees or less, raise your hand for me. Okay, anybody that works with a company that's 50 employees or more? Okay, so a pretty good mix, which is good. And if you didn't raise your hand, you probably weren't paying attention, because that was pretty much everybody. And so why I mention that is that my gifts and skill sets certainly lend themselves towards the entrepreneurial world. The first business I ever started, I was 8 years old. I was at a baseball field. I was not very good at baseball. Turns out I was pretty good at selling. And I said to my mom, you know what, I think we could sell Cokes and snacks to people. There was no concession stand. Now today you'd need a permit to do that, so you couldn't actually do this anymore. But back then when I was 8, my mom took me to Sam's Club, and we bought some Cokes, some Sprites, some chips, some snacks. I put them in my little red wagon, designed my very first signs of anything I ever designed, slapped them on the side of the wagon, and drove that thing around and sold stuff. I had attention because I had food and people wanted food and there wasn't any else for sale. So that entrepreneurial spirit is who I am. I started Design Extensions when I was 17. I was a junior in high school. We have grown, top and bottom line, real numbers, every single year for 19 years in a row. It's almost 20. We're right at that edge. I can't wait to hit that number. I told my team, you can't mess it up this year. We can't mess it up this year because we got to hit the 20 mark. I need 20 in a row. And so the reason I say that is for some of you that are in larger companies, it may be easy to look at somebody like me and think, well, he might not apply to me. I mean, my team's only 12 people. And we work with a lot of small businesses around the country. But I think that these ideas and these principles actually apply to anybody. It doesn't matter whether you're building a business or building a church or whether you're building a career or just building a life. These things apply to everything. So that's kind of why I'm here as well. And here's a random picture of my 5 kids just because they're super cute. And see, now I have your attention. Not that I'm using my children for marketing, kind of sometimes, but they don't mind it. They love being on screen. So to stand out, which is kind of what this talk is about, how do we stand out in this world? We live in one of the noisiest marketing worlds ever. And so on one hand, it's easier than ever for us to get in front of and target the people that we want, right? I mean, because we all know we can go on Facebook and set up an ad campaign to only show this ad to men between the ages of 37 and 42 who have a dog and 2 children under the age of 12 and a white picket fence within this mile of zip code, right? We can target those demos that tight now, but how do we keep and maintain that attention? How do we actually stand out? These are 3 things that have been helpful to me in that time period. You really need to know your strengths. You need to know where your people are. I'll talk about that in a minute. And we need to know what content works for those people that we're targeting. So the first thing that I'll mention is know your strengths. The reason that I think this is important is when I started Design Extensions, I did everything. I did design, I did programming, I did marketing, I managed my books. I did all the things that have to be done when you start a business and you're just a kid and you don't have any idea what you're doing and you make really, really bad websites back then. And over time, what I thought was that I was good at technology. That's what people told me. People said, you're good at design, you're good at technology. But what I realized was that wasn't really what I was good at. I'm not a great designer. I'm a decent designer. I'm a better designer than probably 80% of the population. I can make my way around Photoshop and Illustrator, but I'm not a great designer. I can debug code on an average level, probably below average level, to be honest, but I'm not a great programmer. Those are things that I'm not great at. And I could focus on those things, and I could be upset about them, and I could take my 1 in something and try and make it a 3, or I could focus on the things that I'm actually good at. What I've always been good at is building businesses. I did it when I was 8, I did it when I was 12, I did it when I was 17, and I've done it ever since. That's what I'm actually good at, is building the business and ensuring that at the end of the year, we made more money than the year before. Because as much as business is about a lot of other things, it's about mission and vision and values, and if you know anything about my company, you know that we believe in those things heavily. But at the end of the day, it's about making money. Because if we're not making money, we can't do anything else. So we have to know our strengths. For me, my strength is actually running the business, but it's taken me time to get to that place that really worked for me. And so there's 3 things within this that I think are really important. One is personality, the other is passion, and the last is ability. Of these 3, one of them you have the most control over. The other 2, to some extent, are the way God made you, although they do change a little bit over time. Personality, I think, is hugely important. If you've not done a personality profile for yourself, and even with your teams, I would highly recommend doing an outing like that, finding a curriculum. What I like to use is the DISC personality profile. I picked that up from the Dave Ramsey EntreLeadership organization a while back. It's similar to a lot of others, Myers-Briggs, other things, but I think it's a little bit more simple to understand. And before I actually hire anybody, they're required to take a personality profile test. What was the name of that first? The DISC, D-I-S-C. And this, you can take it online. You can buy a package that will teach you how to do it and teach you how to teach it to your team, regardless of whether you run your own business or have a team somewhere else, or you just want to do it for your own understanding of your own strengths. And what I did with our team was I had them take these personality profiles, and it gives you like a chart, and there's a D, I, S, and C. I don't have time to go through all of them, but there's 4 different personality types. And people tend to skew towards one or the other and have some variance in each one. Well, what I did is I printed everybody's charts out, and I cut the names off of them. And then I pinned them up on the wall in the conference room. Then we had a little game. There was a prize. Whoever could get the most people right, so you had to pick a person's name and put it with the right personality profile. And the reason that matters is that we all are inherently different. And that matters with regards to how we communicate with one another. It matters with regards to how we market to our customers. For example, some of you are like me. And if I told you, hey, let's go build a bridge, you'd be like, great, let's go build a bridge. And you'd get your tools out or whatever we'd build a bridge with, because I'm not very handy, and we'd go start building a bridge. We wouldn't know what we were doing. We wouldn't have a blueprint. We wouldn't have any details, but we would be building a bridge. And we'd probably do it today, because that's just how I am. But there are others of you who I would say, hey, let's go build a bridge. And you'd say, okay, well, hold on a second. What kind of bridge are we talking about? And what color do we want it to be? And what's it going to be made out of? And who's going to be the general contractor? And what about this? And what about that? And what about this? And what about that? And what about this? Some of you are that person, right? It's list after list after list, checklist after checklist after checklist. Neither one is inherently better than the other. They're just different. We need both of those things. I am a high D, which means I like to just go build the bridge. My wife is a high C, which means she likes to plan the bridge. The problem with super high Cs is they never actually build the bridge. The problem with high Ds is they build the bridge and it falls apart because it wasn't planned very well. That's why we need to know what our strengths are, and then ultimately if you're a leader of a team or a leader of people, you need to know what their strengths are. And this test doesn't lie. It is so good because when you read through them, you just go, that's who that is. And it matters because it affects the way you communicate with them. The other thing is passion. We're all passionate about different things. And I believe more than anything else that you should not hate Monday. And if you hate Monday, you should find something else to do. You don't have to do it today. That might not be practical. You might not be able to do that today. But all of us spend so much time working, we should do something we actually enjoy. You're not going to enjoy it all the time. I love my business and I love what we do most of the time, but there are times that I absolutely hate it, and that's going to be what it is. But if you always hate Monday, find something you're passionate about, and you're going to be so much better at it. It might have to be something you work on in the evenings until you can get to a point where you're able to actually make that shift. Or you might need to talk to your leader, depending on what kind of organization you're in, and say, hey, here's the things I'm passionate about. Do you think that there might be areas here where I might be able to be an asset and be of value to the team? And if I have a team member come to me and say, hey, Jay, I've learned that these are the things I'm really good at and that I'm really passionate about. I'd love to help the organization in this way. What do you think about that? Great, let's do it. I want people on my team who are passionate about what they do. And the last is ability. Of these 3, that's probably the one we have the most control over because you can improve your ability in particular areas. And I mean particular skill set, technician, task level stuff. We can all learn to get better at the new Facebook, ad program because they just changed their entire algorithm last week. And we have to adjust to those kind of things. That's ability that can be applied over time. But if you don't understand what your personality lends itself to and what you're passionate about, you're going to have a very difficult time standing out because you're just going to be there instead of actually engaged in what you're doing. So the next thing is we need to know where your people are. And by your people, I mean the people that you want to communicate to, the people that you need to connect with for whatever the reason. Speaking of social specifically right now, just some fun stats. These are from the middle of last year, so they probably adjusted a little bit since then. Facebook is still the king of social. Now, that doesn't mean that that's the only place that you need to be, but the reality is that right now, this is an insane number. Facebook has 2 billion active users. There are 7 billion people on the planet. That means that almost 30% of the world population has a Facebook account. That is both amazing and moderately terrifying. What's most interesting about this to me is actually numbers 3, 4, and 5. WhatsApp, Facebook Messenger, and WeChat, to some extent, mostly owned by the same people. And those have risen drastically over the last couple of years. Messaging Automated bots, automated responders are becoming a really big deal. They already are a big deal, but they're going to really become a big deal because what they allow us to do is to create more personalized experiences when people engage with us as a business and reply with things that actually are valuable and helpful without having to have as many people working on those things. And so we're going to continue to see, I think, the growth in those areas. The second being YouTube. I think that's really important too. YouTube remains a strong powerhouse in the social environment, which Google is really thankful for. Also helps with our Google rankings. Many of you know that. If you have good videos that are well tagged, good descriptions on YouTube, it can help with your rankings on Google. And what's important about that is if anybody's been paying attention in Facebook, you've seen over the last couple of months, really the last year, they've made an aggressive push towards video. They've pretty much pushed YouTube out of Facebook. I mean, anybody who does any kind of stats like that in here knows. Anybody that doesn't, if you post a YouTube video on a Facebook post, it's going to have just a minor fraction of the engagement of an actual Facebook post. You probably remember back in the day when you posted a YouTube video, it actually showed the video in the space and played it in the space automatically. Google actually, Facebook removed that feature because they wanted to push their own video features. And that's the danger of totally relying on one platform. So know where your people are, but also know where they might be going and just kind of be aware of the whole system. You don't need to be engaged on all these platforms. You can't be. Unless you have a huge team. If you got a really huge marketing team, great, go for it. You got somebody that specializes in each area, awesome. But most of us that are in smaller businesses, I can't be a specialist in all of these things. But I need to be aware of them. I need to see where the trends are going. For example, LinkedIn, at the very bottom of this list, number 19. I would have told you a year ago that I thought LinkedIn was going to die, maybe a year and a half ago. But Microsoft's done an exceptional job, I think, over the last 6 to 12 months of starting to revitalize that platform. And I think it's coming along a lot better. So while there's only 100 million people on there versus 2 billion on Facebook, it might have the right target for what you want. You might be able to connect to the right people because LinkedIn searches can be very powerful to find the right people in the right roles, or even more importantly and valuable in LinkedIn too, is, hey, I want to connect to this person. This person knows them. Maybe I could ask them if they can connect me to that person. And that's just old school referral, contact personal marketing. It's dangerous for us to live in a world where we believe that social media is the only marketing vehicle now. That's not true. Facebook's the only marketing vehicle. When I started Design Extensions in '99, Facebook really didn't exist. Google was only used by super hyper nerds. And Yahoo was the king of the internet, not to mention AOL. Well, if all I was an AOL expert and I wasn't willing to change and shift over time, I have a pretty big problem right now. And that's something to think about. Don't put too many eggs in one basket. Be aware of what's going on. Have areas that you specialize in for sure, but be aware of what else is happening out there. Twitter, I think, is struggling right now. Facebook and YouTube are still clearly king of the hill, both by numbers and actual engagement. So quick question. Most of y'all probably know this, but I'll ask anyway. What is the difference between what Google knows and what Facebook knows? What does Google know? So Google knows what people are looking for. Facebook knows who people are. Now, there's some overlap. They certainly both know a lot about both of these things, no question about it. But inherently, if I want to find somebody that's looking for a particular product or service, Google might be the place that I start with that. But more and more, the Facebook ad platform has matured aggressively over the last 12 months. I felt like at one point, every day we logged into it to make an ad change, they had changed the whole UI. So I'm sure some of you have experienced the same thing. But that platform has matured so much. There's so much opportunity there on Facebook to connect with very specific people. And Facebook is constantly learning. Everything we like, everything we share, everything we click that we're sad about, or happy about, or angry about, or anything we click on, they are following and they learn. There's actually a link, I should have included in here, that you can actually go on Facebook and see all of the profiles they have you attached to. I'll find it, maybe post it somewhere, post it on my blog or something, or post it on Twitter later, and you can see it. And if you haven't seen that link, you should go look at it, because it's likes to play video games, has children under the age of 12, travels a lot, all that kind of stuff. It's pretty intense. So I'll put that link on my Twitter account later today if you want to see that. This is just interesting where the dollars are going. This is why it's important to know where people are going. Google and Facebook, again, like they're king of the hill right now. 40 cents of every dollar goes to Google, 37 cents of every dollar goes to Facebook. Ironically, a couple of years ago, I remember when people were saying that Mark Zuckerberg had no monetization strategy for Facebook. How did that work out? Just fine for him. They clearly have a strong monetization policy, and that policy is if you have a Facebook page that's a business account, it will not be seen unless you put money behind it. And the new stuff that they're about to roll out that they just announced either earlier this week or last week, if you haven't seen that, go on Facebook, just look for like one of their newest videos. It talks about everything they're planning to do to maintain engagement. Because ultimately for Facebook, as much as they want all of our ad dollars, what they really want is people engaged. They want people commenting, they want people liking, they want people sharing, they want people making connections because that's how they learn. And if they can learn, then they can allow you and I to put ads against those people that they've learned about. Right? So they're going to continue to take business pages, organization pages out of the standard news feeds. And I'm telling you right now, within the next 6 months, the only thing that you're going to see in a news feed if it's from your business, is from a paid ad. Like in the next couple of months, we're basically moving to a strategy where we won't even post on a business page anymore unless it's a paid ad or boosted or something like that, because it's just not going to show up. You're wasting time. You need to know what content works. And this varies by market. It goes back to attention, though. What acquires attention and what maintains that attention? In the last couple of years, we've put a really, I'll skip that. We put a really heavy push into, I'm going to come back to that, sorry. We put a really heavy push into video over the last couple of years. And that's had substantial returns. If you are not doing video either at your company or on your team, you need to find a way to get people to do it. And there are two different kinds of video, both of which are very important. One is really high-end, high-quality stuff like Chris produces and Ashley produces that looks top of the line. The other is just raw content. You know, it's me on my Insta story or my, literally put a selfie video up on your LinkedIn account that's talking about what's going on today, what's working for you, what's not working for you, because it's about making relationships. And if everything that you produce is ultra high-end and ultra produced, it starts to feel fake. Matter of fact, our team, we do a lot of really funny videos for our company. There's a couple of really, at least I think they're funny. If you go on our page after this and look at it, there's some funny stuff we've done recently. We did a family video because it's one of our core values where I have like 20 kids in the office all crawling around and crazy, and it's a lot of fun. But the problem sometimes too is an image one for us, in that we sometimes put out so much fun stuff that people are like, do y'all even work, And I'm like, yes, we work a lot, but the fun stuff is what allows, I believe that kind of fun stuff allows a creative team to be better at what they do. And video is an amazing powerhouse. I'll show you one specific example. This is a little team demo reel that we posted last week. It's just a $50 boost. There's basically no money behind this. The video took an afternoon to shoot. And it's a really fun video. We took kind of like a 90s intro TV show, did a video around it. For $50, it reached 2,000 people, had 1,100 views, 128 likes, 15 shares, 20 plus comments in less than a week for $50. And those are targeted. And so, for $50, that's insane. If I put a zero behind that, all those other numbers over there get a zero behind them pretty much. That's why video has amazing impact right now. I'm going to back up a couple of slides because I wanted to show you one other thing, and I skipped it. I think the website is dead. Websites are dead, and that's from a guy who makes websites without a little help. And here's what I think about this. Websites by themselves are the sales guy or girl, the sales team, if you will. And it's like having a sales team that doesn't have a phone, and doesn't have a car, and doesn't have an email account. How effective is that sales team going to be? Not very effective. A website that's just sitting out there. Like when I first started building websites, everybody didn't have one. And so just to have one was like a step. Like, oh, I got a website. Whoa, I'm in the big league now. I got a website. That's how it was in the late 90s. If you had a website, that was a pretty big deal. That's not good enough anymore. The website needs tools around it, and that's where the video comes in and some other pieces. It needs tools around it in order to be effective. Otherwise, it's just sitting out there. You might as well not have one. Just have a single landing page with your logo and phone number on it. I mean, don't really do that, but if you're not going to do anything else, like the other pieces are the cogs in the wheel that connect it and make the system flow. So going back to video real quick, video storytelling, these stats are amazing to me. The average user spends 88% more time on a website with video. 88% increased time on a website with video. 45% of people watch at least an hour of Facebook and YouTube videos a week. Social video generates 1,200% more shares than text or images. And a video landing page can increase conversions by 80% or more. Who would like to increase conversions by 80% or more? Right? I mean, like if you're not doing video now, you need to be doing it yesterday. Video is huge from an attention standpoint. And don't make everything so like sterile and corporate. There's this mentality, and I'm sorry for those of you that are in bigger businesses because I don't mean to like demean corporations. It's not necessarily, it just comes out sometimes. My intention, my point is everything doesn't have to be sterile, right? It can have personality. When you go on an about page on your company, and I get for some industries, you know, if it's high-end lawyers or high-end insurance, they feel like everybody needs to be suit and tie and like really buttoned up. But show a little personality. People buy from people, right? In the end, people buy from people that they trust, that they know and they like and they trust. That's when people buy stuff. They buy it because it's a good product too, but they buy because of the people. And video is the best way online to amplify that because I can show off my personality, I can show off my team's personality, I can show off character that you will remember because when you watch my family video and it's got 20 kids crawling all over the office, you will remember that way more than somebody else talking about the last website they built. You don't care about that. You don't care about the last website I built. I got 20 years worth of portfolio I could show you. But why you want to work with us is because you want to work with us. And that's true regardless of what industry you're in. Audio. Audio is becoming big again, which is weird, right? Like if you back up, when the radio first came out, audio was really big because there was no TV. And then TV came out and audio kind of fades out. But the reason the audio is so big right now, who in here knows who Alexa is? That's weird, right? Like pretty much everybody in here knows who Alexa is. If you don't know who Alexa is, Amazon has a device called an Echo. It's a speaker basically. And it was funny, I was practicing this and I used that line because I usually practice these things. And I said that, and I have an Echo in our living room, and Alexa goes, "I'm sorry, Jay, I don't understand that." You know, and I'm like, "Ah." But it's amazing. Like all of a sudden now, voice is back. I can say, "Alexa, you know, tell me my schedule today." Well, this morning you have blah, 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 blah. The weather is this and this. Make sure you watch out for traffic. Like, here's their latest news brief. And that news can be defined based on what I want. So that's why podcasts now are coming back. Not coming back. They're exponentially growing, I think, still, which is why I started the podcast that I did. Google has their home device now that they're pushing too. Some of you may have that. You say, "Okay, Google," and then you tell it whatever you want. And it magically tells you all the answers. And then Apple, which is a little bit late to the game for them, has the HomePod coming out allegedly within the next month or two. It's supposed to be out in December. All the same product essentially. It is a home automation intelligence device that's speaking to you. The reason that matters is that all of these devices, that's not really true. The first two devices, for the most part, had the intention of knowing as much about you as they can to sell you stuff. I think that Apple's pitch is a little bit different because for Google and Facebook, we are the product. Like we're the product that Google and Facebook are selling. In Apple's case, they actually are selling the product. They're not selling us personally, which is a little weird to say, and I'm not saying it's right or wrong. That's just the nature. I mean, people get freaked out by things like remarketing ads that show you the same ad because you visited the website over and over again. But for me, if you're going to show me an ad for a pair of shoes, I'd rather see the ad for the pair of shoes that I actually liked, that I was looking at, versus some other one. I wish they didn't make me go back and end up spending more money at Amazon. Back in June, I was at a conference listening to Simon Sinek talk. If you've not heard of him before, you have to read Start With Why. It's one of my favorite all-time books. And go look his talks up online. Simon Sinek, he's amazing. And, he just gave me a lot of insight as I was thinking about what I really wanted to do. And I thought, I'd really like to do some more speaking, but I'd really like to write a book. And how many of us have said, like, I'd really like to do X, Y, or Z? And I've said that for years. And then I just said, you know what? I'm going to do it. and I hired an editor, and the book's almost done. Matter of fact, my final draft of the book is due to the editor tomorrow, so that's what I'm doing tonight, is finishing that. And then I thought, well, how do I get attention for that? How do I drive attention to it? Well, maybe I could do a podcast, and I could use some of the stories from those business owners in this book. So the book's idea is around building a business that lasts. I interview on the podcast business owners that have been in business for 10 years or more, and it's really neat to have these conversations because all of a sudden I'm able to have a relationship with somebody else who might not have talked to me before because I didn't have a connection. But now I can shoot them a message and say, hey, I've got a show going on, or shoot their assistant a message and say, hey, I've got a podcast. I'd love to have so-and-so on the show. Do you think they'd be willing to do that? Well, guess what? Almost everybody says yes. Because we all like to tell our stories. Especially entrepreneurs love to tell their stories. And so that becomes like a Trojan horse for the business. I don't need an ROI on this. And that's really important. Everything doesn't need an ROI. And I know some of us live in worlds where we're told it has to have this, it has to have it. It doesn't. It can be something that leads to something else. The fun videos we do don't have an ROI. This doesn't have an ROI, but it will lead to things that do. It's hard to track some of those things. And so check out the podcast. The book will be out in the second quarter of this year. That's the plan. And love to have you check that out as well. A couple of suggested books I'll leave you with that relate around the things that I'm talking about. If you're interested more in podcasting in general, because I do think that's a strong area that's relatively low barrier of entry for you. You can record it on your phone. You can I use an app called buzzsprout.com. And that's where I upload my podcast to. It'll connect it to iTunes. It makes it really easy for you. Get a designer to design some nice cover art for you. And have a conversation. Interviews are great. Profitable podcasting. I actually discovered this book about a week after I had published the podcast, which I wish I had discovered it a month before. Really great. Platform by Michael Hyatt. It's a little bit of an older book, so some of the content there, he talks about Twitter a lot, which I would probably push that more towards Facebook now. But Michael Hyatt in general, in that book, Platform, it's about standing out in a noisy world. He does a much better job of talking through some of these topics than I would. And Gary Vaynerchuk, Jab, 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 Right Hook is one of my favorite books of his because it's very tactical. It's looking at different platforms in the social world, showing specific examples of things that worked and didn't work. And those things have all been helpful to me. So I hope they might be helpful to you as well. I am out of time. Love to connect anytime. My company address is designextensions.com. You can find me on Twitter at OwenDesign. A little bit later today, I'll post that link to the Facebook secret data that I think is so crazy. If you haven't seen that, and you can always email me at j@designextensions.com if you think of questions you didn't come up with today. I'm happy to answer those. I love helping people grow businesses or even helping people grow their roles inside of other companies. So thanks for having me out today.